Recently, Netflix released a documentary about the Zodiac Killer, and the documentary dives into Arthur Leigh Allen as a Zodiac Killer suspect. It brings forward a lot of incredible circumstantial evidence that was never before heard, but the documentary does not talk about reasons why Arthur Leigh Allen may not be the Zodiac Killer. You have to understand that while there is a ton of circumstantial evidence against this guy, it has never been concluded that he was the Zodiac Killer. I have made a video in the past talking about this, but I want to make another video specifically talking about reasons why he may not be the Zodiac Killer. So anyways, let's get into reasons why Arthur Leigh Allen may not be the Zodiac Killer. It should be noted that there were 4 confirmed Zodiac Killer attacks. The first attack was done on David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. Unfortunately, neither of them survived. The second attack was on Michael Mageau and Darlene Ferrin. Michael Mageau would survive, but sadly Darlene Ferrin would pass away. The third attack was on Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard. Cecilia Shepard would survive for a few more days before unfortunately dying from her injuries, but Brian Hartnell would survive. The fourth attack was done on cab driver Paul Stein. Now, right after the third attack, Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell both said that the killer had long hair, long enough to reach the eyelets of the mask he was wearing during the attack. The killer was wearing an executioner-style hood with only eye holes to see out of, meaning that he must have had hair long enough to reach the eyelets of the mask. At the time, Allen was balding. He still had some hair on his head, but it definitely wouldn't have been long enough to reach eyelets of a mask he was wearing. Now, you might say he was wearing a wig, but it would make no sense to be wearing a wig underneath an executioner hood. Now, before this third attack, 3 girls in the area also saw a man wandering around the area suspiciously. Investigators concluded that this man was most likely the killer. Now, all 3 of the girls said that the suspect had hair. They also had a pretty good look at him and had no reason to suspect that he was wearing a wig. And they also called him, quote, nice looking. Some more circumstantial evidence is the fact that Arthur Leigh Allen wasn't a match for any of the prints found on Paul Stein's cab. However, these prints could have been from a number of different people. Arthur Leigh Allen also wasn't a handwriting match for the Zodiac Killer letters. I know in the documentary they say that he was a match, but this is one person's opinion. Many other handwriting experts have concluded that he was not a handwriting match. In 2003, a DNA sample was pulled off a Zodiac Killer letter. Arthur Leigh Allen was not a match for this DNA sample. Arthur Leigh Allen was also left-handed. He could write ambidextrously, but he was truly left-handed. Now, Michael Mageau and Brian Hartnell both said that the killer was using his right hand to hold the weapons. And if you were to murder somebody, I would suspect that you would want to use your dominant hand. Now, after the fourth attack, 2 police officers who were driving to the murder scene also saw a man walking on the side of the road, and they may have even pulled over to talk to him. This man was later concluded to most likely be the Zodiac Killer. Now, one of the police officers, Officer Don Falk, said that Arthur Leigh Allen did not look like the man he saw walking that night. Now, eyewitness testimony isn't always accurate, but police officers are specifically trained to remember people's faces for situations like this. So there were many people who saw the Zodiac Killer walking. However, none of them said anything about him having a limp. Now, Allen had gout in his feet, and he had trouble walking. I believe they even talk about this in the documentary. Don Chaney, a friend of Arthur Leigh Allen, also confirms this in an interview with Tom Voight. A 911 operator who spoke to the Zodiac Killer also said that Arthur Leigh Allen didn't sound like the person she spoke to on the phone. There's plenty of more evidence against Arthur Leigh Allen online, but these are the most important ones in my opinion. I'm not saying it wasn't Arthur Leigh Allen, but I'm just saying that there's plenty of evidence that should have been covered in the documentary against him. And I'm not saying that the Seawaters or anybody in the documentary was lying. The Seawaters had some very good evidence that they brought forward late in their lives, so it wouldn't make sense for them to bring forward this information so late in their lives if they were trying to do it for fame or for money or for any other reasons. It just doesn't make sense, so I do believe their stories. However, they really only bring forward circumstantial evidence and no hard physical proof. Now, you might say that there is a ton of circumstantial evidence against Arthur Leigh Allen, and I would say that you are right. I have never seen a serial killer suspect that has this much evidence against them. However, I think Arthur Leigh Allen intended for this to happen. Arthur Leigh Allen was a child molester. He was a terrible man who preyed on innocent young little children who couldn't defend themselves, and I believe he felt embarrassed because of this. So I think he liked the idea that he could frame himself as this big killer that was terrorizing all of California. I think in his mind he thought it would be better if he was thought of as a serial killer rather than somebody who targets innocent young little children. So I think he purposely made himself out to seem like the Zodiac Killer, even though he definitely was not. Now that's the end of the video. Obviously you're entitled to your own opinion, and if you think it's Arthur Leigh Allen, then there's a lot of reason to believe that. I personally don't think it's him. I made a whole video about this in the past, so if you want, go check that out.